About 6 weeks ago, middle elder Kent Holliday pulled me into a hug and said, I really want to go to Selma. Now, some of us know Kent. He has a really beautiful southern accent from North Carolina. And he said it with that lovely honey drip in his voice. He said, no, no, I'm going. I'm going to North Carolina. I'm going to Selma, come hell or high water. Thank you, Lila. So, all right, yes is my favorite word. Yes is my favorite word. So I said, well, let's go. Let's go. So we did. Michelle Henley, one of our members, Kent, and my husband John and I went to Selma last weekend. And we made our plans at the last minute, and we got on the runway at LaGuardia, the icy, crazy day when the plane slipped off into the water almost. Thanks be to God, it did not. And we really had to delay our flight due to weather, and didn't get to leave until Saturday. But go we went. Absolutely we did. And I cannot actually describe what it was like to be there. Just a sea of human beings. I saw a report that said 70,000 people. I think that is so understated. But a sea of people, mostly black, to be honest, but clearly also Catholic nuns and priests and Unitarians in T-shirts that said "Stand on the side of love," and women in hijabs, and Jewish people in kippahs. It was an international, interreligious, interracial, multicultural, intergenerational kind of party, really. Like a big band of people. Like if you go to an Earth, Wind, and Earth, Wind, and Fire concert, and you're standing outside on the lawn waiting for Maurice White to come out when he was young and fine, and you were just waiting and waiting, but it was like that party atmosphere of joy. It was like that, this joyful, joyful experience. But of course, it wasn't just that. It was also a kind of moment in history that, like a brush with history, that I don't know when you'd have that again. 50 years ago, C.T. Vivian, one of Dr. King's confidants, I got to shake his hand. 50 years ago, got to hug a young woman named Joanna, whose father hosted Dr. King in the movement. We met a woman named Claudette, Claudette Colvin, who 9 months before Rosa Parks stayed on the bus. And she was only 15 years old. And yes, she was pregnant. So they did not let her be the symbol of the movement, but she was a movement maker. It was an awesome experience to be on the lawn of the Brown Memorial Chapel and listening and watching and hearing the music from inside the church play outside the church. And to think, yeah, this is a moment. This is a moment in time. Underneath that moment, though, is the incredible violence of the time. I mean, Bloody Sunday was a bloody Sunday. It wasn't a picnic. People put on their Sunday best. They went to the bridge. They were met with hatred. They were met with disdain. They were met with a hail of bully clubs and a cloud of tear gas. They were left, a couple of them dead, 4 dead on the ground. And that violence captured by the TV cameras shocked our nation to its core. And the shock to our core is what led to the Voting Rights Act in 1965. So, one feels joyful and jubilant, and one also feels really sad, tragic. Tragic that human beings can violate each other because of difference in such incredibly destructive ways. John Lewis was talking to Melissa Harris Perry, and she said, we talk a lot about courage, but was there fear? And John Lewis said, I was not afraid. I was not afraid. I was 23 years old. I had been inspired by Martin Luther King. I had been inspired by Rosa Parks. He said, I knew they might beat us. I knew they might jail us. I knew I might die, he said. But somebody's got to die for the right thing to happen. Lord have mercy. It's kind of stunning. So I think about Selma and the kind of beautiful, celebratory, joyful marking of 50 years' time. And I think also about the nightmare. The nightmare. The battle for change in our world is a battle between good and evil, between shadow and light, between fear and love. And that's what we saw kind of whack into each other on that bridge. There were Christians on the bridge. Christians on the bridge who believed that they had the right to vote and that by their Christianity, God had blessed them with love and freedom and they could walk toward it. And on the bottom of the bridge were other Christians. Christians who believed that their sovereignty and their manifest destiny and their entitled supremacy was being violated by those people who were the mark of Cain. Christians and Christians with different value sets clashing. It's not the only time that religion has clashed in history, is it? My people, my Christian people, persecuted the Muslims, the Moors, trying to convert them in the time of the Inquisition. One goes to Morocco or one goes to southern Spain and you go into the church and see racks on which people were laid and tortured to convert them in the name of God. ISIL is waging a crazy war. That's not Islam. That's a crazy war of anger in the name of Allah. Some people might say the Jews are occupying Palestine. They might say that in the name of chosenness. But in this time and in this day, and I can comment on this, in this time and in this day in ancient Israel wrestled theologically with the circumstances around them. They had been called by God because Abraham was called by God and they were destined by God to be a chosen people, a people with so many people that they outnumbered the grains of sand. God called them, God chose them, God sent them off to the land of milk and honey, to Canaan. So what happened when they got to Canaan? Okay, yeah. When they got to Canaan, there were some people there. And they fought the people and got the land. But the narrative, the narrative, I'm just saying the story they told themselves, is God wanted us to have this land, so it's ours to have. Does that sound familiar? If God can choose an old patriarch and tell his descendants to go take the land, then God can choose some white people in Europe and tell them to go take the land. And God can choose tribes of people in Africa and tell them to go take the land. And if God can do that, God can also command people to turn planes into bombs. And okay, if God can do that, God can also let us know who the infidels are. God can let us know who the scoundrels are. God can let us know who the sinners are. We know God is on our side. And that same problematic theology makes us okay to put gay people out of our church or put things outside of our church that says Jesus would hate homos too. Absolutely not true. That same broken theology can make us say women can't talk in church. I'm kind of talking. That same broken theology, that same problematic God makes us think mission means go and convert someone, change somebody, fix somebody. Because we've got God in our pocket and we know what God is all about. So Israel had that problem. And Israel isn't the only one that had that problem. One thing we know for sure is God's people get it wrong a lot. We get it right sometimes, and we get it wrong. And the psalmist wrote this psalm not from a position of, I know I got it right. The psalmist wrote the psalm from the position of, I know God is good. I know God is so good that God takes my crap and fixes it. I know God is so good that even when I get it wrong, even when my theology is too small, even when I'm judgmental, even when I'm just straight up wrong and stank and out of line, God still provides a way. God still puts food on the table when I'm hungry. God still takes the parched and thirsty land and turns it into a river. God still comes for the healing. God still comes to take me from my distress. God is so good that God listens even to my feeble prayers from an imperfect place. The psalmist is celebrating the goodness of God. The goodness of God, who, when God hears a land over which his way with tears has been watered, to quote James Weldon Johnson, when God hears the cries of a land being tread, by the blood of the slaughtered, when God hears the prayers of the people on a bridge, God can take those broken eggs and make a Voting Rights Act happen. Not from a place of puppet master, but by using ordinary, everyday people of faith to make it happen. That's how good God is. And that's what the psalm is saying. The psalm is saying, our very good God will help us get it right. So on August 6, 1965, Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act. Just as women had persevered to make a change, just as black folks and white folks had worked together on emancipation, this movement, this multiracial movement, where Rabbi Heschel says, when we walk, we pray, our legs are singing. This movement made things move. So being in Selma was powerful. Listening to the president's speech, I think it was a really good one. I love the way he talked about the importance of the word we, but I especially loved the way he said, we are not finished. That's the most important theological concept in my life of faith. I am not finished. Oh my God, I'm not finished. I'm not. Incomplete, hence hope. I can become. I am in process. God is not finished with me yet. And we are not finished. We stand between the now and the not yet. We stand between the victories of yesterday and the hope for tomorrow. We stand on the precipice of an America that really leads the globe in love. What if we led the world in love? Not GNP, not economic progress, not college graduates, not science careers, but what if we led the world in love? Because we are an experiment that is actually working at least as just as much as it's not. We are not finished. And we are not in this movement for justice by ourselves. We are aided by the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Leah and Sarah and Rahab and Mary and Martha and Lazarus and Jesus, Yeshua, who was a good Jewish boy. Be clear. Be clear. So we don't get to claim God for ourselves. We don't get to pretend like we know more than we know. We don't get to decide who's in or who's out. We don't get to decide who's chosen and who's not. We just get to be people in process, people not finished, working together with our God who loves us to finish it. That's our project. That's our job. And God, who is so good, is in the business of recovery and reconciliation and restoration. God, who is so good, will take what is brittle and broken and make it supple and smooth. God, who is so good, will meet us exactly where we are, love us just as we are, and help us to amplify the light that is the divine spark in us until we be more than we could ever imagine. Like, forgive me, but I'm silly. The Grinches whose heart breaks out of the box because love makes it grow. This is who we are, people of light. Light ready to expand and meet other light and grow a healed world. So I'm back from Selma dreaming about a healed America that leads the world in love, that understands that our God can do more than we can ask or imagine through the power of love at work within us, who understands that we can, all of us, dance in the freedom of our liberation. We can be against tyranny. We can be against hatred. We can be against oppression. We can be against discrimination. We can be against domination. We can be against homophobia. We can be against sexism. We can be against racism. And we can be for love. We can be for love.